It just seems that the deadly conflict in Manipur, it is just not coming to a halt. The beautiful land of Gauriya Vaishnava Dharma has now transformed into what I would say a lethal war zone, with patrolling, area domination exercises of the Indian Army continuing in full swing everywhere across the state. And amid the ongoing tensions, operations by the security forces to rescue civilians are still continuing. Troops are being freshly deployed as and when the necessity is being felt in a particular area. The conflict has left thousands of people homeless and stranded in various shelter camps across the state, with their struggles left unheard and undocumented. All they can do is now wait for the situation to return to normalcy as they appeal for peace to be restored. But an important point that I would like to mention here is that the pattern of violence has been more intense in certain particular areas, such as New Chekon in the Imphal Valley, which have seen a massive demographic change and rapid mushrooming of churches over the past few years. The repercussions of this conflict are now beginning to be felt in the other neighboring states as well. In Meghalaya, for example, the tripartite peace talks among the center, the government of Meghalaya, and the outlawed militant organization, Hinitrep National Liberation Council, HNLC, that was supposed to begin formally in the first week of June, have now hit a roadblock because of the Union Home Ministry's prioritization of the situation in Manipur. I will directly now come to your question, since our today's discussion is on that. Who are the Kukis? Because this is entirely about the immigration of the Kukis and their role in the current violence. So demographically, as we all must be aware by now, Manipur, as I also explained in my earlier talk, it is inhabited by three different communities: the Hindu Meiteis and a small section of the Pangals or Manipuri Muslims, who are the residents of the valley, the Imphal Valley, and the hill-based Christian Naga communities, who are mainly concentrated in three districts: Tamenglong, Senapati, and Ukhrul. And the relatively smaller in number Kukis, uh, Kuki communities, Thado, Paite, Waife, Gangte, etc. Now, besides Manipur, the Kukis are spread across Mizoram, Assam, Tripura, Nagaland, Meghalaya, Bangladesh, and Myanmar. They are also sometimes referred to as the Zo people or Chin Kukis. So when we go to Manipur, we often hear the word Chin Kuki, Kuki Chin, Chin Kuki Zo. So they are also sometimes referred to as Zo or Chin Kukis. In Myanmar, uh, the Chins or the Kukis, they are recognized in its constitution of the year 1947 as among the four founding groups of the Union of Burma, along with Shan, Kachin, and Burma. In the scheduled tribe list of Assam, Mizoram, and Meghalaya, a total of 37 tribes are recognized as belonging to any Kuki tribe. Now, an important point to be noted here is that under this larger umbrella of 37 any Kuki tribe, there is a sub-tribe called Kuki. Now, we must understand here that the Kukis of the Northeast, they are basically immigrants from Myanmar. Although the original home of the Kukis cannot yet be correctly ascertained, but the term Kuki itself is fairly new, and the earliest written reference of Kuki dates back to British records from the year 1777, when the Vanavasis of Northeast India had launched a series of attacks against British subjects in the Chittagong area of present-day Bangladesh. The term Kuki is also nowhere to be found in any Burmese historical record, even in the Ahom Buranjis for that matter, or Meitei chronicles. A popular belief is that the origins of the term cookie can be traced back to the Bengali language, and it was initially used to refer to the people of the hills who carried bamboo baskets on their back and, and who were engaged in jhum cultivation. If we go back to the census records of 1931, different groups and subgroups among the cookies were classified into old cookie and new cookie. Now, communities such as Gangte, Waife, Anal, Mar, and Kom constituted a part of the old cookie group. Then Ralte, Thado, Paite, Simte, and Sukte, they were the new cookies. But influenced by the American Baptist Church and the narrative of a cohesive Naga identity, uh, that is propagated by the NSCN, the National Socialist Council of Nagaland, uh, the Anal community among the cookies, like various other so-called Naga communities of the Northeast, such as Monpas, Mishimis, Nishis, Shardukpens, etc., they also today identify themselves as Nagas. And other erstwhile cookie communities, like formerly they were cookies, such as Monsang, Moyon, Maring, all these communities have also embraced the Naga identity. Talking about the separatist policies of the NSCN, the Isaac Muiva faction of the NSCN, or NSCN IM in short, in this context, because I just ended on that note, the previous question. So several Vanavasi communities from Manipur, such as Aimol, Chiru, Chothe, Kharam, Khoireng, Kom, they were recently proclaimed as a part of the homogeneous Naga tribe. But the names of the various sub-tribes among the cookies, they are not definite, and they show a fluid pattern across different states and regions of the Northeast. Like, for example, the Paites call themselves Zomi in Myanmar, but these same Paites identify themselves as Mizo in Mizoram. It is only in Manipur that they call themselves as Paite. Now, yes, as you mentioned about the internal conflicts among the cookies, we must need to understand here that there has always been uh, a vehement opposition in Manipur against the inclusion of the term cookie as a tribe. A memorandum was submitted in July 2021 by the Thado Impi. Now, this is the apex body of the Thado community, of the Thado tribe. And the Thado Impi had raised several objections against the recommendation of the state government of Manipur to include Kuki in the list of recognized scheduled tribes of the state. According to them, that is according to the Thado Impi, since Kuki is not a tribe and does not even signify the name of a tribe, it therefore does not deserve inclusion in the ST list. So Kuki for them is a generic term that is used to refer to a number of different tribes. And Manipur at present has a list of 34 tribes, including two that are called any Mizo or Lushai tribe and any Kuki tribe. Now, in terms of their population, I'm coming to the Thados now. In terms of their population, the Thados constitute the largest group among the Kukis of Manipur, and they account for almost a quarter of the state's tribal population, followed by the Tangkhul Nagas. Most of the other recognized numerically smaller sub-tribes within the Kukis, such as Gangte, Waife, Mar, Zo, Paite, etc., they prefer to call themselves Zo rather than Kuki. I will mention here about a book that was written by Civil Services Officer William Shaw on the Thados. In this book, he mentioned about four clans of the cookies named Lushe, Sute, Poi, and Thado. Now, it has been written in the book that various other smaller communities, such as Lunkim, Chiru, Kholhang, Lenthang, Gangte, etc., are included within the broader community of the Thados. Now, Thado hegemony over these smaller cookies sub-tribes needs to be understood further. We often hear the use of terms in Manipur, such as Kuki Siki, Kuki Makai, by the Thados, okay, to refer to these sub-tribes. These terms, the usage of these terms by the Thados to refer to the other subtribes among the Kukis has alienated them further. And historically too, if we go back to history, we can see that there has been a disproportionate domination of the Thados among all other Kuki tribes over the politics and administration of Manipur. This is a real fact. Outer Manipur, that is the tribal Lok Sabha constituency of Manipur, has elected 17 MPs since 1952, and an overwhelming number of 14 out of these 17 MPs have either been a Thado or a Tangkhul Naga. Even in the bureaucracy, the first person to have qualified for the Indian Administrative Services from Manipur was a Thado, K. Kipgen, in the year 1956. The first tribal IPS officer also from Manipur was a Thado, T. Misao. That was in the year 1965. Again, one of the first Northeastern women, her name was Nengcha Lohum, from the IFS, the Indian Foreign Services, to have served as an ambassador. She was also Thado. Several senior level bureaucrats and top ranking police officers of Manipur have been from the Thado community. The Thados have also occupied a position of dominance in the intellectual discourse of not just Manipur, but also the entire Northeast. Many eminent professors, chair professors, academics in several central universities of India, also writers and commentators on different issues concerning the Northeast have been Thados. So all these factors have led to feelings of animosity among the other smaller Kuki communities against the Thados. Frequent conflicts between them have often turned violent in the past. For example, the Thado-Paite clashes of the year 1997-98 that led to the killings of hundreds of people and displaced thousands of them from their homes, and compelled by the gravity of the situation, the central government had to intervene and deploy the army to bring the situation under control. And it was in the aftermath of this conflict that the insurgent organization, the ZRA, that is the Zomi Revolutionary Army, consisting of various smaller Kuki tribes and sub-tribes such as Zo, Waife, Gangte, and Singte, was formed under the leadership of the Paipings. So the ZRA, which is a Myanmar-based insurgent organization, it was formed after the end of these clashes under the leadership of the Paipings. So this militant organization, the ZRA, Zomi Revolutionary Army, was distinct from the other militant groups of the Kukis in the sense that they were always under the control and leadership of the Thados, such as the Kuki National Army. But this was not the case with the ZRA. And there have been several occasions in the past as well when the Thado MP, the highest decision-making body of the Thados, has clashed with the apex body of the Kukis, that is the Kuki MP, declaring that the Kuki MP has no moral and legal authority to speak for and on behalf of the Thados. And during the current conflict as well, that led to the violent sequence of events in the Kuki-dominated district of Churachandpur on the 3rd of May, the Thado MP dissociated itself completely from the rally that was organized by the Kuki MP in protest against the eviction drive of the Manipur state government. And coming to your question on militancy now, the separatist organizations, the church-backed militants, to be very clear, they have been the biggest beneficiary of this mess. And this is especially true for those communities which do not identify themselves as either Naga or Kuki. So in such cases, the NSCN, the Isaac Muiwa faction of the NSCN, have declared them as Nagas. The recent spate of violence in Manipur seems to have united all the Kuki Chin Zomi people across Manipur and the neighboring states of Nagaland and Mizoram in again raising their demand for the creation of a separate Kuki Zomi homeland. So in this regard, we cannot sideline history. The current conflict has several important layers, several important dimensions related to drugs, guns, and missionaries that have played out in many different ways at multiple levels. And as of today, several of these warring communities which keep on fighting amongst each other, among the Kukis, such as the Mars, Paites, Thados, etc., they have collaborated among themselves. They have joined hands to fight against the mighty Hindus and expel them from Manipur forever. And with the last remaining Meitei population of Manipur being confined to the Imphal Valley, they are continuously on the losing side. The places of religious and cultural importance in the Meitei Hindu pantheon are gradually dwindling over the years. And even during the ongoing violence, several temples of the Meitei Hindus in Churachandpur, in Imphal West district, Bishnupur, Tengnopal, Kakching, Kangpokpi, they have been vandalized, they have been destroyed by violent Kuki mobs through several well-planned attacks. That is in fact the main subject of our discussion today. So we began by discussing about the Kukis and their role in the current conflict. So as we discuss about their role in the current conflict, as I was explaining, so ignore, uh, we cannot sideline this issue. The the demand that has been continuously coming up at different points of time in history about the creation of a separate Kuki-Zomi homeland. So what is this separate Kuki-Zomi homeland and how it has been playing out in the current scenario of Manipur? That is something which we need to unravel and understand. Because in this context, the agenda for establishing a separate Kuki-Zomi homeland or even Greater Mizoram, as it is sometimes termed, uh, that is something which needs to be understood in detail. And it is also known by several other names such as the Land of Freedom, Zalingam, or Zoram, etc. Now, this political imagination of a separate Kuki and Zomi homeland with a concrete territory dates back to the late 1980s, when the first and the largest of all the Kuki Zomi insurgent groups, that is the KNO, or the Kuki National Organization, was formed. And after the formation of the KNO, the Kuki National Organization, the demand for the creation of Zalingam or Greater Mizoram or a separate Kuki Zomi homeland has been surfacing periodically. And the recent violence has, as I said, has seen the resurfacing of this demand for a separate Kuki administration. And this entire idea of establishing a separate Kuki Zomi homeland or a Christian zonation emerges from the belief that the hill areas of present day Manipur adjoining Mizoram and Myanmar is inhabited by the Zo community, and this Zo community share affinity of ancestry, religious and cultural belief systems, etc. with the Mizos. In fact, the term Zalingam was initially coined to give shape to the idea of the establishment of a separate Kuki and Zomi homeland. Now, well, is this demand going to fructify anytime soon? We certainly cannot overlook the threat associated with the same, because there was a declaration recently, a press statement was issued by 10 Kuki MLAs of Manipur for a separate administrative arrangement, and their demand for separation from Manipur is nothing but a step forward in realizing their long-term separate political aspiration of a Christian zonation and establishment of Mizo hegemony. The demand for a separate Kuki administration had subsided, I would say, following peace negotiations between the KNO, that is the Kuki National Organization, and the ZRA, the Zomi Revolutionary Army, both of which are Myanmar-based insurgent organizations, with the government of India under the suspension of operations agreement. Now, both the KNO and the ZRA, they seek self-determination for the Kuki Chin Zo people in the form of Zalingam. Now, Zalingam or Greater Mizoram is a defined territory that passes through Manipur, Nagaland, Mizoram, Assam, Bangladesh, and Myanmar. Several Kuki civil society organizations and their armed outfits uh, have claimed more than 60% of Manipur's 22,000 square kilometer of territory to be incorporated in their separate Christian Kuki Zomi homeland or Greater Mizoram. This region encompasses the Southern Hills area surrounding the Imphal Valley on three sides, the Kuki-dominated district of Churachandpur, Chandel district, which has a mix of Kuki and Naga populations, and even a few parts of the Naga-dominated Tamenglong and Ukhrul district. The entire state of Mizoram is also included as a part of this imaginary Kuki-Zomi homeland. And besides all of these, they even aspire to include the CHD, that is the Chittagong Hill Tracts of Bangladesh, and the Chin and Sagaing divisions of Myanmar. But we must understand that the right to self-determination cannot be gained by scuttling the rights and freedoms of other communities. Now, according to the Kuki-Zomi separate homeland narrative, those areas of the Northeast which are currently inhabited by the Kuki-Chin-Zo community, they are not yet a part of the Union of India. So, unlike the Naga demand for a separate country of Nagalim, the Kukis have sought separation or a separate state for themselves within the Union of India. When we go back to the year 2012, influenced by the demand for a separate state of Telangana, an organization called the KSDC, that is the Kuki State Demand Committee, was formed. Uh, and this organization, the KSDC, soon led the movement for a separate Kuki land in the Northeast. And when we look at the situation of Manipur, most of the strikes, economic blockades, bunds, etc., that are declared with the objective of not permitting goods enter the Hindu-dominated Imphal Valley, uh, they have been declared by the KSDC, that is the Kuki State Demand Committee. So these have been a regular affair on the part of the KSDC since the time of its formation to harass the Hindus. According to the KSDC and sections of the Kuki-Zomi community, it was after the defeat of the king of Manipur in the 1891 Anglo-Manipur War, the kingdom of Manipur became a British protectorate. But the lands of the Kuki-Zomis, they say, were not a part of this agreement. So in their opinion, the Kuki-Zomi separate homeland or Zalingam, it sprawled across a huge part of India's northeast and several contiguous areas in present-day Myanmar. And under the Treaty of 1834, the British handed over a significant chunk of this land to Burma, that is present in Myanmar, to appease the Burmese king of Ava. The militant organization KNO, Kuki National Organization, has argued that the Zalingam included the area up to the Chindwin River in Myanmar, and it also covered the bordering regions of India in the northeast, the area around the Nantalit River in northern Myanmar, and it stretched to the hilly and rugged mountainous terrain of Myanmar's Chin state in the south. One last point before I conclude. In India, the Kuki homeland included the hill districts of Manipur, including the Naga areas. A few parts of Dimapur in Nagaland, Karbi Anglong, North Kachar Hills, and Haflong in Assam, Tripura, and as well as parts of the CHT, Chittagong Hill Tracts in Bangladesh. But over the years, this imagination of a separate Kuki-Zomi homeland has shrunk to that of a state that would be carved out of the hill areas of Manipur, adjoining Mizoram, including those areas which are dominated by the Naga communities. And the Kukis, they believe that a separate state would provide them with political power over their so-called own resources, which are at present, they say, are largely controlled by the Hindus, the Hindu mighties. So this would allow them to achieve overall socio-economic development. So that's all. And they also argue, several Kuki organizations, that a separate state would enable them to make decisions on matters related to governance, related to law and order, etc., based on their specific needs and aspirations. In my earlier talk also, I had mentioned about the unnatural increase that has been registered in the population of the Kukis over the past few decades in Manipur specifically, which has made matters worse. If we look at the census data from the period 1951 to 2011, the Kuki population in Manipur alone had incrementally increased by almost 5 times. And a majority of these Kuki Christians from the Chin state of Myanmar have illegally settled in many of the interior forested areas of the border districts of Manipur. And this huge unnatural surge in the population of the Kukis cannot merely be attributed to an increase in their overall birth rate. If combined together, it is estimated that the present Kuki Chin Zo population of India in Manipur will outnumber the population of both the Meiteis and the Nagas. So, coming to your specific question now about the role of the post-independent Indian government, especially Nehru and the Kabau Valley. The Kabau Valley, which was previously known as the Rice Bowl of Manipur, uh, it is a part of present-day Myanmar, and earlier it was an integral part of Manipur, the Kabau Valley. In terms of territorial extent and based on an overview of the fertile plain terrain that lies beyond the India-Myanmar international border, it has been roughly estimated that the Kabau Valley extended up to the Chindwin River in Myanmar. So there is no doubt about the fact that had this valley been a part of Manipur today, food security would have come as a boon for the state. So was there therefore any larger conspiracy behind the capture of the Kabau Valley by Burma initially, aided by the then Congress government at the center with the blessings of a corrupt Breaking India mafia? So what was the role of Nehru in this incident? I'll come to this now. Although the Burmese captured the Kabau Valley, but as per the terms and conditions of the Treaty of Nyandabur that was signed with the British later in the year 1826, Burma had to pay a compensation tax to Manipur for the capture of the Kabau Valley. During the reign of the last king, Bodha Chandra, Manipur was merged with the Union of India in 1949, just 2 years after gaining independence from the British rule for 57 years. That is from 1891 to 1947. In 1950, Hijam Irabot, a social leader from Manipur, he visited Burma, that is today's Myanmar, and he began negotiations with the Burmese army to stop the payment of the compensation tax to the government of Manipur and let Manipur have the Kabau Valley. So in 1954, after this, Nehru stopped the compensation tax that the Burmese government was paying to Manipur for capturing the Kabau Valley. And he literally transferred the valley from the Hindu majority state of Manipur to Burma as a token of peace without having the consent of the common people, the natives living there, or the Ningthoja dynasty, that is the Meitei royal family. And today, the Kabau Valley is completely under the control of the military junta in Myanmar. Since the Kabau Valley is an integral part of the history of Hindu Dharma in Manipur, the Meitei Hindus strongly opposed this decision of Nehru. But Nehru refused to listen, and eventually the Meitei Hindus, they were compelled to leave the Kabau Valley and migrate to areas that constitute today's Imphal Valley. And depending upon their convenience, many of these Meitei Hindu families settled in the surrounding hilly regions of Manipur. Because at that time, if we recall, they were classified under the scheduled tribe category. So they settled, some of them also settled in the hills. It was from the Gazette of 1951 onwards that they were no more categorized as scheduled tribes. So the changes in demography in the hills of Manipur became further noticeable from this time onwards. And since 92% of Manipur's tribal area is a mountainous region inhabited by the majority Christians, the Meitei Hindus settled here. They were now gradually driven out in different phases. And at the same time, the process of capturing all government and non-government jobs by Naga and Kuki Christians had already begun. And not just grabbing jobs and land, Kuki, Naga, and Mizo missionaries have been relentlessly attacking and defaming the Hindu religion and culture of Manipur through various different ways at different points of time. So the later governments, as you mentioned, at both the center and the state, I would say they only facilitated the further breakup of the Meitei Hindu society for their own vested interests. The conflict was becoming intense with each passing day. The economy was in a very bad state in Manipur, which further added to the problems. There is a famous book, the name of the book is Open Secrets, India's Intelligence Unveiled by Malay Krishna Dhar. So he has talked about it in detail. So in the 1960s, Manipur had very little to boast of its economy. And despite the rates of literacy being significantly higher when compared to other states of the country at the same time, but the youth of Manipur were being denied the opportunity of higher education in both general and specialized streams. Scholarships and jobs were extremely limited, and students from only well-to-do, affluent families could move out to pursue higher education. So the well-educated, yet the frustrated, mighty youth had taken to alcohol and drugs of cannabis origin for escaping to a different realm. The markets of Manipur were soon beginning to be flooded with IMFL, Indian made foreign liquor. Uh, I mentioned about this book because uh, the author, who was a former IB officer, he has written it through his own personal experiences about the questionable role of the Indian intelligence agencies in this regard. Because the IB was well aware of the developments in the Northeast at that time, including the rapid scale at which the missionary Islamist communist combine was spreading its wings in almost all the states. And several Christian missionary organizations, even if we see today in the current context, they were supportive of the Naga and the Mizo rebels. And alongside this, Islamic forces were continuously at work in states like Assam, Meghalaya, and Tripura for destabilizing the country as a whole. But in Manipur, the government relied on certain brute force tactics instead of genuinely reaching out to the mighties and hearing their problems. The mighties were under the impression that the government of India deliberately refused to elevate the status of the former princely state of Manipur into a full-fledged state of the Union of India. Even under the British Empire, Manipur had maintained its independence in some form or the other. So now a series of popular agitations for statehood began in Manipur, but the then government turned a deaf ear to the developments that were taking place and instead relied on the police, the paramilitary, and the army for dealing with the catastrophe that was still yet to come. The ILP, the inner line permit system, was applicable only for the hills, that is the outer Manipur area, which is Christian dominated. But on the other hand, anyone could enter, buy land, and encroach in the inner Manipur area. The inner Manipur area, that is the Imphal Valley, where a majority of the Hindus were and are still concentrated. And when Manipur was finally granted statehood in the year 1972, almost 90 to 92% of the state's land was reserved for the Christian tribals, whose population was approximately around 29 to 30% at that time. And the rest 10% of the land in the valley was accessible for all. Now, in the meantime, the increasing consumption of alcohol and drugs by men was soon beginning to take its toll on families. And the government was continuously failing to address this massive problem in Manipur. So mighty Hindu women eventually decided to take the call, which led to the formation of a social movement called Mera Paibi, that was initially aimed at tackling the issues of drug abuse and alcoholism in the Manipuri Hindu Samaj, forcing the then Manipur People's Party-led government to pass this act, the Manipur Liquor Prohibition Act, in the year 1991. But despite the prohibition, liquor consumption could not be successfully controlled and alcohol remained widely available. And this led to agitations in various different parts of the state against liquor and drug related menaces. The government's apathy towards these issues paved the way for propagandists of the left Christian cabal to infuse feelings of self doubt among the mighty Hindus against their own dharma. They were being ridiculously made to believe that Hinduism had only weakened them from within and that they were never Hindus, but only nature worshippers or animists. So the intention was clear to defame Hindu Dharma in every way possible and thus cut the mighty Hindus off from their own roots, from their own history, so that they can be easily trapped and converted later. And this was, of course, as we all know, it was reinforced further through the deracinated Indian education system and concocted theories of racial discrimination. The rest of India was not taught anything about the Northeast, its glorious Hindu history, its culture. So, an image of the Northeast as a terror-infested zone uh, with no progress, with no development, soon came to be popularized in the media. So this was the beginning of discord and disruption between Northeast India and the rest of Bharat. Christian missionaries began to decide everything, even today, from the price of groceries, fruits, and vegetables that are sold in shops owned by Hindus to the different ways of celebrating different Hindu festivals. So, in this context, we would have to go back to the British period, the 18th century, when massive migration of the Kukis first began. So, their migration began from the 1840s onwards into the sparsely populated hill tracts of Manipur. And this migration was enormous. Enormity can be understood from the fact that during the period 1851 to 52, a massive chunk of 8,000 Kukis had moved into the Zemi Naga inhabited areas of the North Kachar Hills district of Assam. And by the year 1860, several colonies of Kuki inhabitants had come up in different villages of this region in Assam. And by the year 1866, hundreds of Kuki immigrants from Manipur had settled down in North Kachar. So this eventually resulted in many older inhabitants of these areas, especially the different Naga communities, such as Zeliangrong Nagas, Rongmei Nagas, Semi Nagas, etc., fleeing from these areas in due course of time. Uh, the then political agent of Manipur, his name was Colonel W. McCulloch, he exploited this situation further for the advantage of the British colonial state. And he was the mastermind behind the settlement of Kukis in the hills of present day Manipur, which were back then predominantly populated by the Zeliangrong Naga community. Several villages in this region were earlier known by Zeliangrong Naga names, and they all had Hindu roots. If we go back to these names, for example, there is a village Ferzol. The present name of this village is Ferzol. This is in Tipaimukh subdivision of Churachandpur district. It was earlier called Duigai when inhabited by the Zeliangrongs. Okay, and even the name Churachandpur, the name Churachandpur itself has been derived from the Hindu king Maharaj Churachandra Singh, who had ascended the throne of Manipur, of the princely state of Manipur, after his predecessor Pulachandra Singh was jailed. But nowadays, the word Lamka, which is a Kuki name, Lamka, is mostly used for any reference to Churachandpur. And depending upon their population, the Colonel McCulloch, he was allotting lands to the new Kuki immigrants and was also settling them strategically in different areas. So his motive was to use the Kuki settlements as a buffer zone mainly, in order to ward off all the threats that the British government was facing uh, from the hostile Naga community. Because the Nagas were protesting vehemently against the Christian conversion activities at that time that were taking place. So large sums of money were being advanced out to the Kukis, and they were also assigned different duties to further the interests of the colonial state. Like, for example, on the advice of Macula, Kukis were recruited into the Manipur militia as Kuki irregulars, which is a regiment in the Manipur army. And they were a part of the expedition against the Lushais, that is the Mizos of present day, and the siege of Kohima in the Naga revolt of 1879-80. So all Nagas, especially the Zeliangrongs at this time, resented this policy. But the continuous immigration and settlement of the Kukis, which was mediated by the state to serve its own long-term political objectives, further reinforced the growing animosity and resentment between the Kukis and the Nagas, which resulted in several armed confrontations between the two communities over land and forest resources. Uh, the Nagas, being permanent dwellers, they were deeply attached to their lands and villages. But on the other hand, the Kukis were ruled by their despotic chiefs. The British government exploited the situation further so as to establish its supreme control and hegemony over the hill tracts. And the colonial state now frequently began to use both the Kukis and the Nagas against one another to suppress any form of rebellion or uprising. Uh, Several Zeliangrong Naga villages were being attacked by the Kukis at this point of time. And if I talk about the current situation, in a recent report that was prepared by the Manipuri Society of Delhi, it was claimed that the total illegal immigrant population in Myanmar, in Manipur from Myanmar is significantly higher than the official figures. You want me to focus on the scenario after 1947, the
Yes,
immigration
how
scenario?
has the civil war in Myanmar fueled this problem?
Yes. So since the time the British left India in the year 1947, the immigration of the Kuki-Chin Zo people into India, uh, it can be divided into actually different phases. So initially, their migration began towards the late 1950s and the early 1960s during the civil war in Myanmar. So during this period, refugee camps were set up in several border towns and villages of Manipur's Churachandpur district. And a majority of these refugees chose to stay back uh, in Manipur, and they never returned to their home country, that is Myanmar. And it was later reported that they were resettled in Manipur by the then Congress government at the center. In August 1988, when Myanmar was witnessing widespread protests and demonstrations against the military junta-led government, a huge population of the Chin Kukis who were displaced from their homes due to continuous infighting between the rebel forces. They had sought refuge in Bangladesh and the hill states of neighboring Northeast India. So this was the second phase of their immigration, when three hill districts of Manipur, namely Chandel, Churachandpur, and Senapati, had registered a record increase in the number of foreigners. Refugee camps at this time were set up at More, Singhat, Taikul, and other border towns. And like the earlier batch of immigrants too, this second batch also did not go back to Myanmar. And most importantly, the then governments at both the center and the state did not undertake any necessary action for the deportation of such a huge chunk of foreign population to their home country. And after this, the third phase of the Kuki-Chin Zo migration, it took place in 2005, or from 2005 onwards, after an informal ceasefire was declared between the Assam Rifles and Kuki militant organizations. So subsequently, Kuki militants stopped their attacks on the security forces, and accordingly, the Assam Rifles too stopped its counter-insurgency operations against the militants. So this is
Thank
about
you.
their immigration.
At this point, it becomes pertinent to discuss this suspension of operations agreement, the SU agreement, and what is the role that it has in aggravating the situation in Manipur?
Yes. So there are a total of 32 Kuki insurgent groups in Manipur. Okay. Now, out of these 32 Kuki insurgent groups, 25 of them had signed a tripartite SU agreement. SU is the suspension of operations agreement with the government of Manipur on the 22nd of August 2008 with the objective of initiating talks and negotiations for peace. Now, these 25 Kuki militant outfits function under two larger umbrella groups. 17 of them function under the KNO, that is the Kuki National Organization, and 8 of them function under the UPF, that is the United People's Front. Now, as per the terms and conditions of the SU agreement, both the security forces and the militant groups are not supposed to launch any armed operation against each other. The SU groups are also required to abide by the Constitution of India and the laws of the land by not resorting to any form of extortion or extortion related activities on the common people, besides accepting Manipur's territorial integrity. The militants are confined in designated camps, and they are also given a financial stipend, interestingly, of rupees 6,000 per month. And this financial stipend is paid to the militants from our taxpayers' money. And financial assistance is also provided to maintain these camps. The arms of the rebel groups are deposited in a safe room under a double locking system, and the weapons are to be used only within the premises of the camp, strictly for defensive purposes. So one of the keys remains with the militants, and the other one is kept in the custody of the Indian Army. The groups are provided arms only for the purpose of guarding their camps and protecting their leaders. But coming to the recent spate of violence in Manipur, which has clearly proven that the Kuki terrorists have violated every single term and condition of the Sioux Agreement with the open and active support of the common Kuki people. They are now imposing a blockade on Manipur's Lifeline National Highway number 2, thereby stopping the supply of life-saving medicines. They are also blocking the supply of water to several Hindu, Meitei, and Nepali Gorkha villages of Churachandpur and Kangpokpi. The period of the Sioux agreement is 1 year, but it is extendable depending upon the progress of the talks. A joint monitoring group with representatives from all the signatories is responsible for overseeing the effective implementation of the Sioux agreement. Now, although the state government of Manipur had withdrawn the Sioux agreement with two insurgent groups, the KNA, that is the Kuki National Army, and the ZRA, that is the Zomi Revolutionary Army, on the 10th of March this year itself, on the ground that these two militant organizations were influencing the agitation among illegal land encroachers. But the Sioux agreement continues to be operational with the other remaining militant groups of the Kukis. And the demand has now come up for the immediate withdrawal of this agreement with these groups as well. So we know about the drug angle in this conflict, as I had already covered it earlier. So, this entire poppy cultivation, that is an issue, a major issue in this violence. It is an easy source of income for a large number of people in Manipur, since it is used for the production of many drugs, including morphine. Moreover, it is also easy to cultivate. Poppy is easy to cultivate. It requires less of maintenance and also a much lesser amount of investment. Many top politicians and bureaucrats, besides militants and drug lords from Manipur, Mizoram, and Myanmar, are both overtly and covertly associated with this immensely lucrative narcotics business. They threaten the villagers of dire consequences if they do not toe their line. In fact, in a sensational incident, poppy seeds were seized from the house of a Kuki drug lord at a place called Mantripukri in Imphal West District, uh, just after the violence had begun on the 8th of May. And there is a picture of a lady, Kim Neo Haukip Hangshing, enjoying herself amid poppy fields somewhere in Manipur, had gone viral in social media some times back. And this lady, Kim Neo Haukip Hangshing, represents the KPA, that is the Kuki People's Alliance in the Manipur Legislative Assembly from Saikul Assembly constituency. She is married to David Hangshing, who is the chairman of the KRA, the militant group, that is the Kuki Revolutionary Army. So the problem began in this year because of the government crackdown. The poppy could not be successfully harvested. The plants were destroyed at the time of flowering. And this was the beginning of the tension, which gradually inflated into the deadly situation that Manipur is going through right now. And as a result of this, the poppy cultivators, local Myanmar-based drug mafias, the insurgent organizations, the illegal immigrants from Myanmar, and not just the insurgent organizations of Manipur, but also various other cross-border terrorist groups of Assam, Nagaland, and Manipur involved in the drug trade, they suffered huge financial losses. The drug cartels of the infamous Golden Triangle in Southeast Asia soon felt the heat. And the eviction of the land encroachers, mostly from the Kuki community, from the protected and reserved forest lands in Manipur, intensified their anger. So all these factors finally led to the outbreak of this ghastly violence. And the fact that the government of Mizoram has been maintaining complete silence over the issue, despite poppy cultivation being widespread throughout Mizoram, speaks a lot. because besides Manipur, Mizoram also happens to be a major hotspot of drug trafficking and gold smuggling in the northeast. And interestingly, most of the poppy cultivators and others associated with them in this drug business in Mizoram and the districts of Churachandpur, Tengnopal, and Kangpokpi in Manipur are people exclusively from the Kuki-Chin Mizo communities. So we definitely cannot deny a nexus that exists between the political leadership, armed militants, and drug mafias of Mizoram and Manipur. The underground illegal narco business and the smuggling of arms and weapons have deep connections with the insurgency in the Northeast and illegal immigration. Also, the different ways in which the politics of the church has become entangled in this dangerous web of drugs and guns and immigrants, thereby posing a serious threat to India's economy and national security. This is something which needs to be investigated in detail by the Union Home Ministry because they are a cause of concern for the entire country and not merely the Northeast or the government of Manipur for that matter. Because if left unattended, it may lead to a situation of irreparable loss of national security and safety at a later stage. And Northeast India, being a sensitive border region of the country, these issues magnify here more than any other region. So, first of all, without taking further time, I would say the government must complete border fencing along the India-Myanmar international border in Churachandpur district, mainly so that the cross-border movement of these people from Myanmar can be strictly regulated. And this can be done through proper dialogue, discussions, and negotiations between India and Myanmar. And in this regard, a well chalked out policy on refugees is also something which is very important that needs to be formulated, and designated camps must be enacted to settle them. Now, see, political instability or ethnic conflict or any form of livelihood or economic crisis can never be a ground for justifying illegal immigration of people from one country to another. Assam is a very good example of this, of how areas which undergo a massive demographic change because of illegal cross border immigration subsequently become witness to violent conflicts, increasing rates of crime, and all other criminal illegal activities. So, the demand has also been coming up in Manipur that just like in Assam, an error-free National Register of Citizens (NRC) has become the need of the hour to detect all these illegal nationals from Myanmar who are residing in the state of Manipur. And in order to confirm the legal validity of the documents that have already been procured by these illegal immigrants, to prove their Indian citizenship, a special drive can be started possibly by the government with the assistance and cooperation of various local organizations of the Maitis and the Nagas, because the people who help these migrants cross over the border, those people are the main culprits who should be immediately brought to the book. Narco terrorism, uh, drug trafficking and poppy cultivation, and their role in the ongoing violence cannot be overlooked. And in this regard, it is also very, very important that the government of India, under the Union Home Ministry, immediately abrogates the SU agreement, the suspension of operations agreement with the Kuki militant organizations, because this is the agreement that has permitted our security forces to put an end to their counter-insurgency operations against the militants. So the militants are now to be seen roaming around freely with arms, inflicting violence upon ordinary citizens and even the security forces. So this is a very important factor behind the recurring episodes of violence that we see in Manipur. And earlier also, I remember the security advisor to the government of Manipur had himself confirmed in an official press meet about the violations of, about how the Kuki militants are violating uh, the rules and regulations of the SU agreement. And just a few days back from today, I think on the 8th or 8th June, the Mera Paibi, which is the Women's Association of Manipur, it had taken out a massive torch rally across the Imphal Valley demanding the abrogation of the SU agreement immediately with Kuki militant groups and also withdrawal of the Assam Rifles from Manipur. and replacing the Assam Rifles with other security organizations like the BSF, and slogans such as "Long Live Manipur," "Withdraw Sioux Agreement," "Save Manipur's territorial integrity," etc., were heard to be raised during the rally uh, that was organized by the Mera Paibi at various locations in the valley. Uh, Now, coming to the different measures that the government is taking to reclaim looted arms and ammunition from different places of Manipur, they have not yet been very much fruitful because the Sioux agreement still remains in operation. So it still remains to be seen what steps will be undertaken by the government to ensure that these arms are soon recovered and returned. And most importantly, the land laws in Manipur with respect to the hill and the valley areas must be framed keeping in mind the best interests of all the three communities, especially the Meitei Hindus. Uh, but yes, definitely the equal access and ownership of all the other communities must also not be compromised. So in this regard, it is very important that the Manipur Land Revenue and Land Reforms Act of 1960 is revisited and amended, and it is important to create awareness in the rest of India about the complexities of the northeastern region as a whole, and the major problem afflicting this region since a long time now, that is the continuous decline of the Hindu population. The Meitei Hindus have been the victims of gross discrimination in their own lands, all because of the fact that they never chose to abandon dharma. Besides Assam and Tripura and Arunachal Pradesh to an extent, Manipur is the only other state in the northeast where Hindu Dharma still survives. If we look at every aspect of Manipur's rich cultural heritage, the rich Manipuri cuisine, Manipuri dance, music, art forms, they all signify the basic foundational principles and belief systems of the Meiteis that are so much closely associated with Hindu Dharma. And constitutionally speaking, Indian laws, the government, and the administration must treat everyone equally, irrespective of their religious backgrounds. But isn't the scenario at present. We all know about it. So, thereby making the residents of a particular state, Manipur in this case, believe that they are not all the same, and therefore some deserve more rights. So, the cookies, the Christians basically, they deserve more rights than the Hindus, who will forever have to live as second class citizens in their own homeland. So it doesn't even matter for how long they have been living in that particular place. So a genuine and honest debate also needs to be initiated on the question who really are the minorities in Northeast India. Hindus do not stand at an equal pedestal with non Hindus because the Constitution of India, various other laws, rules, and regulations are clear in this regard. And every time a conflict erupts in the Northeast, this difference becomes starkly manifest. From the ILP system, that is the inner line permit system, to Article 371 of the Indian Constitution, we see an inherent anti-Hindu bias with respect to the different laws and policies that have been implemented in the Northeast from time to time. And this is evident from the pathetic condition of the Hindu Riyangs and the Chakmas who resisted conversions and thus had to flee from their original homeland in Mizoram at the peak of the Mizo insurgency. Several families among these communities are still living as refugees in a few remote villages along the Tripura Mizoram border. So, isn't it an irony that in their own land, Bharatvarsh, Hindus are the most discriminated lot among all other religious communities? And the crisis engulfing Manipur is not going to end anytime soon unless the government of India acts tough against the larger anti-India network of missionaries, drug mafias, and propagandists posing as self-styled intellectuals. The Meitei Hindus need our help. They have been ignored for a long time. Uh, we need to extend all kinds of help and support to the grassroots level Hindu organizations that are working on the ground, Bajrang Dal, Vishwa Hindu Parishad, etc. And it is time we understand what these people, the Hindus of Manipur, are facing, and also make the rest of the Hindus in other parts of Bharat aware about the same.